Hi, welcome back to Focal Point on AFR Talk. I am Brian Fisher, your congenial, convivial, and amiable, as always, host. You are listening to Focal Point on the AFR Talk Network. Glad you're in the conversation today. We had a great victory for the pro-family movement in Illinois last weekend. Gay marriage failed. Now, Illinois is a Democrat state, has a Democrat governor, supermajorities in both the Senate and the House, and gay marriage went down in flames. Now, it passed the Senate, but the House, which has 70 Democrats, 121 in the House, they only needed 60 of them to vote for this thing. They couldn't get 60 votes out of 70 Democrat representatives to even bring this thing to the floor, so it died. Now, there are going to be sessions later in the year, and Illinois could bring it back, but for now, a great victory. And one of the things it proves is that the progress of the homosexual agenda is not inevitable. That's what we're constantly being told. We just got to give up. A lot of pro-family organizations have just given up and saying, hey, we've lost the younger generation. Nothing we can do about it. We just have to accept it as inevitable and move on and fight other battles. This proves that we are fighting, in fact, a winnable war. A lot of credit to the Illinois Family Institute, Dave Smith and our friends up there. He's the American Family Association affiliate. He and others did a great job up in Illinois to stem the tide. Now, on another front, dealing with the homosexual agenda, we have been talking for a number of months now about what's going on in the Boy Scouts of America. And here to give us the latest update is Randy Sharp. He is the Director of Special Projects here at the American Family Association, very heavily involved in scouting himself. And Randy, just bring us, we may have some people in our listening audience that have been living like on Pluto for the last couple of months.
Which is no longer a planet, by the way.
Yeah,
They're not even on a planet.
Yeah. So they really would be out of touch in that case, beyond even interplanetary broadcast networks. But Randy, tell us what happened with the Boy Scouts, just for those quick update on what the decision the Boy Scouts just made.
Yeah, 11 days ago, Brian, 1,400 delegates, these are scouters, went to Irving, Texas to the annual Boy Scout meeting. They voted 61 to 39% to allow open and avowed homosexual boys to join the Boy Scouts of America.
So, and you know, I had some scouts call in and say, well, this has never happened, but we know that it's routine for scouts on these camp trips to sleep 2 to a tent. Sometimes it's 4 to a tent, but there isn't any policy that would flatly prohibit a 17-year-old homosexual from sleeping in the same tent with an 11-year-old boy.
Especially no longer. I was a scoutmaster for 8 years, so I know exactly what goes on campouts. You know, these little guys, they try to fool the adults, but we didn't fall for any of that. But the bottom line is we always camped 2 boys to a tent. We had the small pup tent, the 2 men tents, and there are always 2, sometimes 3 boys together, alone in a tent all night long. So there's a lot of trust that has to go into there.
And no adults are allowed in those tents.
No, we were usually 50 to 100 feet away because, you know, boys they're pretty rowdy at night. They like to stay up and laugh and talk. So, you know, us adults, we kind of got 100 feet away, try to get a little sleep. But, yeah, there's no supervision whatsoever. And it's called the buddy system. So you have 2 boys to a tent.
Now, let's fast forward. So this was a real setback. It was actually kind of a blow to us, Randy. We were not expecting that outcome. The Boy Scouts had done the most extensive internal survey or polling of their own people back in January, February, and at that time, 61% of the responses they got back said, let's keep the policy as it is, and then those numbers got flip-flopped when they voted. And before we move on, how do you explain that?
Well, Brian, I was there. I was in Irving, Texas, and I saw a lot. I heard a lot that went on. And the bottom line, there was a lot of coercion. The chief leadership of the Boy Scouts of America took the resort area where all these delegates were. They would let no one in to present any side of the argument other than their side. So the main leadership of the Boy Scouts of America had a big pep rally the night before the vote, and to a letter, every one of them endorsed this new policy. So there were those of us who disagreed with the policy. We had material we wanted to hand out to the delegates. We never even got to the front door, much less inside of it. So it was a very controlled, coercive environment. and these delegates were sold a bill of goods. And now we're going to see the results, and they've already started, and it's all negative.
And let's talk about the results we've already seen. I mean, one of the things we said is we knew that the homosexual community, homosexual activists, they're not going to settle for this. They're relentless. Right. They're determined. They never give up. They never quit. They continue to press. They're always going to take more turf. That's why we have to fight them every inch of the way. We cannot concede one single solitary inch of ground to them, because they will simply use that as a beachhead to try to take more and more turf from our moral culture, moral landscape. And this has already happened in Utah, of all places.
Brian, within 24 hours of this vote, the big gay lobby was already screaming to the mainstream media, this isn't enough. We want open and allowed. We want to allow open and avowed adult homosexuals to be part of scouting. And, that they're going to continue to push and shove and bully their way in. And I'm afraid they're going to make it. But over this past weekend, it's Salt Lake City, Utah. June is Gay Pride Month, and that's where all across the United States, homosexuals have their big parades and their festivals out on Main Street, America. This past weekend, they held one in Salt Lake City, Utah. And Boy Scouts, there were some Boy Scouts and some adult Boy Scout leaders in uniform heading up this parade. They were marching high and proud right in front of thousands and thousands of people in violation of the Boy Scout policy that you cannot wear your uniform to an event that espouses a social or political agenda. Now, this is a little bit of both when you go to these gay pride parades, because they're touting homosexual marriage and then just hollering their gay pride. And the Boy Scouts were leading the way to the throngs of cheers from homosexuals.
Well, in fact, I'm looking at a picture right here. There was a pretty significant Mormon presence at this gay pride parade. There's a organization called Mormons Building Bridges, and I have no idea how the LDS Church is responding to this, whether the LDS Church has said anything about this. The vast majority of the scout troops in the state of Utah are sponsored by the LDS Church, as they were in my home state of Idaho. Probably 85% of the scout troops in Idaho were sponsored by the Mormon Church. And I'm looking at this picture, Randy, and we'll have these pictures up on our website when the action alert goes out. I'll have you tell us about that in a second. But I'm looking at this picture, front of the Gay Pride Parade, Mormons Building Bridges, big banner, and they're holding the banner along with other homosexual activists is an 18-year-old Eagle Scout. And according to this newspaper article for NBC News, he is still active in his troop. So he's 18. He's an avowed, proud homosexual, and he is still active in his troop. So that's a violation of Boy Scout policy.
Well, there were a lot of violations. Number one, you can't wear a uniform when you're in these kind of parades or any kind of social or political agenda event. You just can't do it. I watched a video of this parade, and this fella out in the front of the picture, he was almost militaristic. It was quite frightening, Brian, because he was barking military orders to these scouts and literally marching them down the parade route. But this is only the beginning, and we knew this was going to happen, Brian. When you lose your values, you lose your value. You have nothing that you can hang your hat on anymore. And they're already losing these values. They've lost morally straight. And this weekend, by this parade, the Boy Scouts have lost trustworthiness and obedience, which are 2 points of the Scout law. So these things, they're falling like dominoes now, and it's going to continue. Your listener can bet their bottom dime that this isn't the only gay pride parade in June in which Boy Scouts will march in uniform. Well, it's going to continue.
You got to wonder, Randy, if there are homosexual activists all over the fruited plain. This possibility hadn't even occurred to them. Now, maybe I'm naive thinking they hadn't thought of this, but they read this on NBC News, and they say, hey, why not here? So I'm guessing we're just going to see a plethora of these gay pride events with men in Boy Scout uniforms, scouts in Boy Scout uniforms, even if they have to borrow them. This story here indicates that one of the marchers was in a borrowed uniform, so I got to guess that they're going to be a lot of borrowing of uniforms just so people can march in a Boy Scout uniform. I mean, a thumb in the eye of the American people.
Yeah, and they were carrying flags this time, but I believe from here on out we're going to see signs advocating for adult leaders, gays in the Boy Scouts of America. But here's another point I want to make, Brian. Let me just give this a quote from Kenji Maxwell. He was the 18-year-old you referred to. He said, "It just feels like the right thing to do. That is to march in a gay pride parade wearing your Boy Scout uniform." There's another point of contention right there. No self-discipline. And that's part of the Boy Scouts, is to learn self-discipline, do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But there is no discipline, and this is not the right thing to do. He broke a rule in the Boy Scouts of America. And Darren Smith, who is the spokesperson for the Boy Scouts of America National Office, said that the BSA was going to do nothing about it. And what?
Yeah, I'm looking at NBC. Yeah. He says Darren Smith said it was up to the local council to determine any punishment. So, like you said, headquarters not going to do a thing.
There will be no punishment. What punishment could there be?
Now, we're going to send another action alert out, Randy, with some of these pictures so people can see it for themselves. It'll be up on our website this afternoon. The action alert's going to go out. And tell us what the action alert is going to call for. We've already sent action alerts out before on the Boy Scouts. And tell me just for a second, we've only got about 45 seconds left, but you've heard from some people on our own network that didn't understand what we were doing. How does this illustrate why it's important?
Well, the first thing we're asking people to do, if you have a child in Boy Scouts, number one, get them out of the program. It's only going to get worse. This gay problem is going to escalate to where they control everything that the Boy Scouts do. Number two, if your church or local civic group charters an organization, get in contact with that pastor or that civic leader and tell them you need to drop the charter. Don't associate yourself with the homosexual lobby. Let these folks know that this is unacceptable and that you're pulling your son out of scouting and you want the charter to be given back to the BSA if you attend a local church.
And as we had John Stemberger on last Friday, there's an effort now on a nationwide basis to develop an alternative to the scouting organization. And John Stemberger told us on Friday that they hope to have that up and running at least in some form or another by the fall. And ladies and gentlemen, you're part of the AFA listening audience or network. Do not be fooled. Homosexual activists have just started their assault on the Boy Scouts. The time is now to get your boys out of the scouting program. Thanks, Randy, for being with
Brian.
us. Focal Point, AFR Talk, right back after these brief messages.